And the creative sector, you might be wondering, what is that? So it includes all of the businesses, the nonprofits, and individuals who do work that's kind of rooted in creativity. And this sector is a really significant driver of our state's economy. In 2022, arts and culture was a nearly $1.2 billion industry here in Vermont. Our work strengthens communities, it brings people together, and it also builds our economy. So we're tabling down in the card room today. We'd invite you to stop by if you haven't already. We've got puzzles from Generator Makerspace, and we're also hosting a reception in the Cedar Creek room at 3:30 this afternoon. So now I'm going to hand things over to Juan Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you. Juan Carlos Gonzalez, as you can see there. A little bit about myself. I was raised and born in Puerto Rico. Grew up surrounded by women. My mom was 1 out of 11. I always say that women, pardon my French, women get shit done. And I learned that through my years of growing up with my aunts and my grandmother and my mom. One of the things that I value the most was the encouragement of, and I joke about this because my aunts and my mother were single by the time that I was old enough. And I used to joke and say, I think that you all got rid of your husbands somehow. And they're very independent. Some of them are business owners. My mom was a nurse practitioner and so forth. One of the things that she used to do was take me to my grandmother's house to have her take care of us during the weekend while she will pursue her schooling over the weekends. My grandmother used to have a farm, and during the farming time we will spend with her, people will come by and say, who's the guy that runs the farm? I have a couple of questions. And that always kind of stuck with me. And my grandmother, as tough as she always was, will say, I'm the guy that I'm the guy that runs this farm. Any questions? So she was very straightforward. And I think that that's one of the biggest quality I got from her. So then fast forward, when we moved to Vermont in 2018, from Boston, where I spent most of my career. My background, I'm an engineer by education, hated it, went back to school, focused in science, and I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 13 years, traveled the world with them, and always with a camera. I feel that, I was saying earlier, it's my safety net, but always took images of the industry and warehouses and things like that. Some of my images has been published in National Geographic, Vogue magazine, and so forth. But then fast forward, when I was moving to Vermont, 2018, we were having dinner at a restaurant in Woodstock, and we hear the person next to us say, who's the guy to the staff, who's the guy that you get the veggies from? And the same question was asked, who's the guy that you get the meats from? And I just look at my husband and I said, this is totally deja vu. This is like back when we were growing up.
Yeah.
This was happening back then, and it's still happening.
Yeah.
And granted, when I started the project and when I decided to do the project, the intention is not to diminish the work the men does in the agriculture industry, mainly because a lot of the women have been inspired by their husband, their father, and their brothers to do the agriculture and the hard work that they do. So as part of that, as I start saying, I think that there is something here that it can be said and it could be amplified, and it's the agriculture industry that is run by women, which census have shown in 2022, I believe, that 41% of the farms are run by women, and the majority of the farms, most of the time, 70% are women run, whether they're the owners or the owners of the farm or not. So that alone, I just felt that it was.
It's a woman farm and super.
Thank you. So then, as I started with the project, I started Emily Von Trapp, who I got to know friendly through social media, and I sent her a note and I said, this is the project that I'm working on, and I think that it will be great. My goal is to document 10 women in the agriculture from January all the way to the end of the year, just to see the progress. She loved the idea, and I will quote what she said, fuck yeah, sign me up. And I was just like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted to hear. And it was really, really remarkable to hear from her personally, asking, are you going to include Mary Lake? Are you going to include Kiss the Cow? There's people that have been in the industry for decades. And I said, well, this is the list that I have, only 10. And I think that I could potentially do that. So from 10, it went to 45. So that's the total of farmers. And if I wanted to maintain my marriage, I needed to stop. Otherwise, I would have blown through our budget and everything. It's self-funded, but for the Art Council also they donated a grant as well. But it was a beautiful journey that it took 2 years from the minute they started. I traveled to places in Vermont that I never thought I would ever see, but also I learned a lot about individuals that have been doing the work that is really, really hard, that people don't realize that how hard it is to sometimes get an application through for a greenhouse, to get a funding for a greenhouse and things like that. The people don't see that behind the scenes, so to speak. The same thing with while they're working on their farm, for example, Heather, when I look at their hand, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like legit hard work. Like there is dirt, there's like everything, cuts everywhere. And maybe that's the next project, woman farmers' hands. But I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, and I think that if anything, I think that long term, what I wanted for this project to do was to amplify the women agricultural industry, and for people to say, I want to learn more about it. I want to get involved, and I seen it through some other farmers, like the honey Ariel. She does honey, and she get clients from California, from Puerto Rico, from Florida, asking her to obtain her honey. The same thing with flowers and things like that. So it is good that it's doing that. And I've done, I feel everything that is in my power to do so with, I have a website that's called Vermont Female Farmers, where you can go in, learn about each farmer, how you can support their business, learn about the project and so forth. Another aspect of the project that I was hoping, and I feel that it's doing very well, is that for people to go to a restaurant and instead of ask who's the guy that you get the veggies, they instead say who's the woman or who's the farmer that you get the veggies, so that you get the meats from. So just changing that perspective of how do we amplify women that are in the agricultural industry as well. With that, I think that I cover a lot. I want to show you some of the images. This is only maybe 9 of the 45 that we have 20 something in the cafeteria over the fall, summer and fall. And then the rest was being held at the Fleming Museum, and now the full show is there until May. It's been a dream since it first launched in summer of 2022. And it's been traveling from Billings Farm. King Arthur dedicated a session just to host their first exhibit. Portion of the exhibit was there. From there, I went to the Bennington Museum down in Bennington, Vermont. Same thing, portion of it. Then it came to the State House, and then now it's at the Fleming Museum, the full show again. And then from there, we'll go to Boston in the summer. So feels great. It's a good feeling to see the progress of, and how people are seeing this and people are writing about it, which is the part that was intended to do, right? And I think that hearing people at the opening night last Wednesday, a week ago, at the Fleming, people were crying, which is, to me, was mind-blowing of how touched they are seeing the images and reading the story. One last piece is that as I met every farmer, there was a lot of information. I will start with an email and say, your name of the farm, how long you've been in the industry, is this a first generation or a continuation, what kind of produce, how I can get in touch with you or people can get in touch with you. And then the last question, which opened a can of beautiful information, was why do you farm? And that alone was just pages of information that I was able to capture and get the okay to put it in a book. And then I was able to do a little bit of research and say, who's the person that I can have in this, write the foreword for it and say something about and the connection of the farming industry. I live in Plymouth, Vermont. Congresswoman Becca Balin used to spend time in Plymouth, Vermont with her grandmother, who used to farm in Plymouth, Vermont. She represented the LGBT community, and she's doing great work for all of us, for the state of Vermont. So I reached out to their office and I said, this is my project. I would love for you to write the foreword. To a couple of emails back and forth, and an approval from her team and her. And she did a phenomenal and a very generous foreword that I encourage everyone to read it. I think that there's a copy in the State House floating around. So with that, I will let you see some of the images that I brought along. It's Rita. She was getting ready to get her crops for the season. And it's the part that I was talking about that I will tell the farmers, I will say, I'm coming in, all I need is 30 minutes. I won't take much of your time. I know you are really busy. And I will just sit in the ground and with my camera, I just take a couple of pictures and it will be capture it. And this is a perfect example of that moment happening. And we were talking and it was just such a special moment. And she will ask afterwards. Most of the farmers will say, "Are you done? Or do you need me to pose?" And I'm like, "No, I think I got the picture." So, and you can just keep going. Same thing, Billings Farm. And it's fascinating that she is the granddaughter of her mother worked at Billings Farm and her grandmother worked at Billings Farm. So it's just to see those different generations working within the same industry is just mind blowing in so many ways. And feel free to ask questions as you're looking at the images. This high-low farm. There's the part that you don't see here is she had her kids. No, you're good. She had her kids and they were running behind me at the time because they were helping her keeping those geese who will attack me all the time. So the kids were like this little and they were just ready to charge at those geese because they are vicious. And it was just fascinating through, you can go to the next one. Throughout the whole experience. This is Liz from Three Cow Creamery. She was feeding her cow who she's had for many years. The cow's name is Blossom, and she was feeding her some garlic. I have another picture that while I was taking this image, behind me, I could hear this bell, and I'm like, whatever it is, so I'm not ready to look. And sure enough, when I turned, her bull was like right behind me. So I took a selfie, and it's in the back of the book. I'm like, okay, I either die here or like I take a good picture of it. But the same thing, Liz was just like, I hate my picture taken. Let me know when you're done. And I've taken the picture already. And this is actually a cover of the book. And it was just such a special moment. And she was talking to the cow and feeding the cow garlic. And we were just sitting in. And funny things and the things that I've gathered throughout the project was that sitting taking this image, I will get home and my husband will be like, "You smell like manure." And it was just literally through all my pants and stuff. We can go to the next one. Susu Farm, oh my God, powerhouse too. All these farmers are just powerhouse. It's fascinating how they work together and they believe in the concept of giving back to the earth. So instead of digging into earth, they believe on creating their own soil and planting on it. And it was just fascinating watching them doing all this as they spoke and talked to the land. It was a beautiful moment. Then fast forward, they were being featured in a magazine in California about women of color farmers. And the magazine was going to send a full crew to document them. And they replied to the email and said, this is our photographer. If you need to take images, this is who you're gonna use. So it was a good feeling of like, wow, I guess that they felt comfortable and working and they felt themselves while we were doing this project. And then fast forward, we were doing another project together. The same thing with 7 News. They wanted to do an article and they replied and said, this is the person that we'd rather work with. And it's just been in general, the whole project has been magical and rewarding in so many ways. Yeah. Thank you. Heather Darby. Oh my God. Yeah. I feel that this image just speaks her philosophy, her language, everything. Fascinating. Like to the left of the image, there's a little house, and that used to be the border of Canada in the United States, and then they moved it. And then now all her fields are here where she studied the land and see how some of these grains work better in different part of her property. This whole thing was just full of birds and it was just a magical moment. And she's just going over and seeing also what she does with the University of Vermont, the agriculture department and so forth. And on top of that, she runs her farm that has been in the family for decades and generations. Another powerhouse. Tammy, funny, like the same thing. I feel that every farmer I would go and say, "Oh, I need 30 minutes," and I end up riding the tractor with Tammy, and we'll spend 4 hours and getting all the hail together. And I mean, at the end of the day, I'll be burned, but just seeing them, and I'm like, Tammy, you don't have sun protection, like. And she's like, I do this all the time. I'm used to it. I'm fine. But and again, another symbol of like resilient, and not only because it's a way of make a living, but they love it. Not a single farmer that I talked to said anything negative about the fact that it's a hard work in general, and the reward in doing the work itself. It was just so fulfilling for them, and that's the part that makes me value my job and say that I'm thankful at the same time. Mary Lake, I feel that Mary Lake is the person that everyone and every farmer will say is Mary Lake for part of the project. She is super busy, travel the whole state and outside of the state to shear and slaughter these animals, and she does it in a way that is just I felt comfortable. I'm like, you can shear me, you can like do anything. Like it's just like she just talk and like her style was just, and then at the same time, it's just not a single sign of like, I mean, it's hard work, but she always had a smile on her face and talking highly about the process and everything. And of course, there. Yeah, I mean, another powerhouse.
Wow.
Yeah, it was both of them, when you both were on the field, I was just like, this is just mind blowing. And this was actually taken during pandemic. So in the middle of it. So it was really nice to capture this whole Vermont working, but not giving up regardless this horrific pandemic and everything. So so I think that those are all the images. Is that right? Yeah. So that's pretty much it.
Everything looks good.
Juan Carlos, really spectacular, and you documented really a moment in our time. I had a constituent who passed away, who also photographer who documented Vermont women working on farms, but from a different era, which is hard to reproduce. That was Peter Miller. I don't know if you're familiar with his
Yeah.
work,
A funny story about that.
but I'm grateful to see your work and
Thank you.
to document the next generation. Maybe you skipped a generation. It's really spectacular.
Thank you. Thank you. Peter Miller, when I was talking to Mary Lake, I was halfway through the project. She came over and she said, have you seen this? And I said, no, what is this? And I was looking through the images and I read about Peter as well. I reached out to him. We were supposed to get together. And I said, can I buy your book? And I told him about my project. I sent him a copy of my PDF of what I'm doing. And then I didn't hear from him and I didn't hear from him. And then I learned that he passed. But I managed to get a book of his work and it was signed by him. So I will.
Well, he documented a lot of the Lupini families.
Mhm.
There were three. They were daughters and they farmed until very old age. I did a lot of work for them before. They were an epic bunch of farmers.
Yeah, I think that hopefully my goal is to, and you probably are the first one to hear this, that I wanted to 10 years from the minute they started to revisit these farmers and see where they are at and maybe do part two and add more to it. I mean, I have my list of the farmers, but then I also have a list of farmers that reach out after the fact asking, can I be part of it? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's like, I wish.
You're young enough.
It's the light. It's good light here, so.
Deirdre, you're in the card room, did you say?
Yeah, we are.
How long are you going to be
We'll
there?
be there until about 3:30, and then that's when the reception starts in the
The
theater.
reception, right? Okay, great. And I sound like a talk show host here. You have a book coming out. When will that be? When will that be out?
So the book is out.
It's out now.
Yeah, the book came out at the same time with the exhibit. If you go to Vermont Field and Farmers, it's there. I do warn everyone, it's a self-published book and I do it through Blur, which is print on demand. I'm not getting anything out of it and the joy of making the book. But I think it's like 170. It used to be like 130. And then they say, because of your book is now your typical 20 pages, each page after 20 pages is certain amount of money. And when I do the math, I'm like, wait, what? $170, dude? Seriously? But it's there and people have bought it and like get a notification once in a while. Someone buy your book. So it is nice. And there's all the information, farmers, why they farm, and a lot more.
And in the meantime, we can also see the show until how long is it going to be?
It's at the Fleming Museum until May 17th, which is the semester for Vermont University. A total of 45 images, fully framed, in a whole different setting. And not because I took them, but it is a gorgeous show. And it's mind-blowing in so many ways. So.
Well, I mean, having seen a sample of it, I'm not surprised at all that it's gorgeous. Thank you both for coming in. Really, really nice to see that.
Thank you for your time.
Good
Thank you
story.
so much.
And you're welcome to stay if you'd like. Although I know you have other places in the State House you might want to be, but
I'm so sorry. Of course.
now Dana,
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. I was looking around the room to see. Dana, if you want to join us,
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some other folks that will be joining. I'm just trying to get them to all come in, but find a seat. Can I confirm that, are there two people sitting on Zoom ready? I know the one, Sabrina. Hi, Sabrina. And also Reeve. She's there. Okay, good. Thank you. And one more question before I start. Sent a handout. I have it on paper, but I was trying to get the attention of the assistant. I sent the handout on paper.
so we are, now we're going to be celebrating Farmers Day
Correct.
in the State House. And
Busy day today.
yes, there's lots of days. And we've got a number of visitors who we're going to be hearing from, and several of them are on Zoom. Others are here in the room with us at the State House. So welcome. And if you want to kick it off, Dana,
Be happy to.
I think maybe just in the interest of time, we don't necessarily need to do introductions, but if you want to introduce folks, that's fine.
If it's okay, so when someone comes up and talks, they'll introduce themselves. And not everyone, I mean, a number of people will be talking, but not everyone. Supporters also in the room.
Sounds good.
So go ahead and get started. Is that okay? Great. Thank you all. My name is Dana Hudson, and I am the coordinator of the Vermont Farm to School and Early Childhood Network. My employer is Shelburne Farms, but I actually work for the hundreds of educators, administrators, farmers, school food professionals, organizations, and businesses that make up our robust network. And most importantly, I work for the thousands of young Vermonters that are participating in the Farm to School and Farm to Early Childhood programs in our schools and early childhood centers. I want to thank you all so much for having us here today to share about the impact the Farm to School and Farm to Early Childhood has had on Vermont. as it supports our schools, our farmers, our local food economy, and our communities. We are asking you to support the governor's budget proposal for both the Vermont Farm to School and Early Childhood Grant Program and the Local Food Incentive Program with level base funding appropriations of $500,000 each. The Vermont Farm to School and Early Childhood Network was created in 2008 to address a growing movement of schools that wanted to serve local products in their cafeterias while using food and farming as an integrative education tool to address student learning and engagement. We're not going to do the slides. That's totally fine. I was like, if I have a slide. We use what we call the 3C model of change, which is a strategy for long-term staying power of this work by connecting the classroom, the cafeteria, and the community. This creates a win-win-win situation for students, farmers, families, and communities. And I actually have seen the impact of this firsthand. As my school that my children go to has a very active farm to school program. They have a chicken coop, they have a beehive, they have a prolific garden, and they have fruit trees. And this program is woven into the school curriculum, and every child in that school gets to participate in these activities every single year they're at the school. They come home with stories and memories, but more importantly, they feel a deep connection to the food, their community, and the world that they live in. In Vermont, we have invested in 3 key programs to improve student health and learning while benefiting our farmers. These cornerstone programs, I'm going to list the 3 of them out. The first is the Rosa McLaughlin Farm to School Grant Program that was started in 2006 and has since served 300 schools and early childhood programs in every county of our state. The program provides capacity building and technical assistance to schools and early childhood programs to develop and strengthen their farm to school programs. The second is a local food incentive program that supports increased local purchasing so that more of the $25 million that schools currently spend on food actually stays in Vermont, in the Vermont economy, and goes to Vermont farmers. And we actually know from a UVM study that every dollar that schools spend on local food, an additional 60 cents is contributed to the Vermont economy. And we now have over 100 farms across the state selling to schools and early childhood programs. The third is universal school meals that ensure equitable access to school meals for every student in every zip code in our state. Since for many students, half of their daily calories actually come from school meals, we know it's essential for our students' health, their learning, and their success to access nourishing meals. Today, you will hear directly from teachers, students, farmers, school food technical assistance providers, school food professionals, food hubs, technical assistants. We got lots of people for you to hear from on how farm to school has made a difference. I just looking around the room to see if actually all the people are in the room, as I told you who you're going to talk to. We can take some questions after each person gets the chance to speak, and then we hope to have some discussion at the end if we still have time. But please reach out anytime if you have questions, whether to me or to any of the ones testifying. And just to recap, we're looking for your support, full support for both the local food incentive program at $500,000 level-based funding and the Farm to School Early Childhood Grant Program at level-based funding of $500,000. These programs make a huge difference in the ability of schools to buy their food from Vermont farmers and engage our students in understanding where our food comes from and how programs like this work to support Vermont families, Vermont farmers, and Vermont children. So, anyone have any questions? Thank you so much for listening.
Any questions? Okay. I'll just say thank you, Dana. We just for the sake of everyone who's coming up to speak, we've had conversations this year in the committee about universal school meals. We have not had conversations about the other 2 budget programs this year. We've talked about them in previous years, but we have a number of new committee members who haven't heard about the farm to school program or the local
food incentive, yeah.
Local food incentive grant.
And so we'll spend most of our time probably talking about the grant program and the food incentive, but I will just show you on the back. These are 2 of the exact same one. Someone has 2 of the same flyers. Let me just borrow. On the back of this one, we have something called the virtuous cycle that sort of explains how the farm to school programs weave together universal meals. And it actually is sort of three legs of a stool: local food incentive, universal school meals, and the grant program, to actually improve the access to local food. The sales actually build up on the economy. So universal school meals doesn't live in isolation. It actually is an important component for how farmers also still get compensated for their products.
Representative Nelson.
Is this part of the program that does the backpack meals for kids after school or weekend foods?
What I do know is, what I know about that is that every school sort of does that a little differently. And most schools that I've worked with, the backpack programs aren't integrated into the farm to school, but I'm not going to say it doesn't happen in some schools. And so I don't think I can answer that question. I would say it's not something that it's part of what we're talking about today.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the schools that I've worked with that have had backpack programs, it's been organized very locally. It's not a statewide effort.
Big,
It's a really important.
big deal.
It's a very big deal and very important. But there might be statewide entities, and I'd actually look around my peers in the room. They may be able to answer that question better than I can.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I will step aside and let the next
Got it.
person speak.
Then Jean, are you going to be next?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Gina Clitheroe. I'm with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. I'm our Farm to Institution Program Manager, and I am going to be sharing about the grants program, which other folks are going to be testifying about as well. Connor from the Agency of Education is going to come later to talk about the Local Foods Incentive Grant. So I'm focused on the Farm to School Grant. And this is a report that I'd like to pass around. I think you should have the digital copy as well. That provides an overview of what the Farm to School program does and our investments within the last fiscal year. So as Dana mentioned, the Rosa McLaughlin Act created the Farm to School program in 2006. And so the Agency of Agriculture has been charged to administer the Farm to School grant program. We provide grants to schools, early childcare providers, and nonprofits through a competitive application process on an annual basis. We also coordinate technical assistance to provide schools with the support they need to best utilize the grant funding. So the focus of these funds, as listed in statute and also described in the report, is to improve the health, nutrition, and learning outcomes for students and children, integrate interdisciplinary agricultural education into Vermont classrooms, connect kids and families with the agricultural community, and strengthen markets for Vermont produced products. Since 2006, over 300 grants have been awarded, totaling $2.3 million. And these grants have reached 160 early childcare programs in Vermont and over 158 schools. So focusing on this most recent fiscal year, 73 grants were awarded to schools and early childcare programs, funding 50 early childcare programs in 14 school districts. So within this grant program, as you'll see in the report, there are three independent programs within that, or funding opportunities within that. We have the Capacity Building Grant, the Vision Grant, and the CSA Grant. And these are all offered on an annual basis. The Capacity Building Grant focuses on developing and sustaining robust farm to school programs and is a package of grant funding and also technical assistance to support schools in specified areas such as child nutrition program development, working on buying more local foods or working with school gardens, et cetera. And that also includes a coaching component. So each grant recipient also ends up working one-on-one with a coach who can help facilitate access to resources in their community and also within the greater farm to school network. The Vision Grant is a larger grant that is meant to support creative projects that can be scaled or replicated to impact multiple educational communities. And then the CSA grant is really focused on child nutrition and community connection, which reimburses early childcare programs and after-school programs for the purchase of a CSA share from a local farm. And so you'll see all of this kind of described within the report, a list of the farms that are supporting and contributing to this, As Dana mentioned, over 100 farms in Vermont are selling to schools. And this grant program is really supporting and facilitating and incentivizing that. So at this moment in time, the agency is starting up with fiscal year 25 right now. We have 8 capacity building grants that have been awarded this year. And we are also launching the Vision Grant, and it's going to open in just a couple of weeks. And we're really excited about the Vision Grant this year. We have also, this kind of separate from this pocket of funding, but just so that you all are aware, the work that the agency is doing on Farm to School. We recently received a USDA Local Food for Schools and Childcare grant for $1.2 million. That's going to be providing food to early childcare programs and schools. We ran the Local Food for Schools program a couple of years ago, which you might have heard me talk about actually last year in testimony, and there's details on this in the report. But for the first time, that program now also has funding for early childhood. So we're working on a few different creative approaches to getting local food to childcare programs through that funding. And in light of this new funding coming through, we are pausing the CSA grant this year so that we have capacity to kind of administer this additional $1.2 million grant program. And like I said before, the report gives a nice overview of what this program is about. And the last section of the report includes overview of other farmed institution projects that are not funded through the Rosa McLaughlin Act specifically, but are related. Last year, when we came in to testify, we spoke a little bit about the Farmed Institution Market Development Grant, the work that the agency's been doing with the Department of Corrections and increasing their procurement of local food and nutritious food. And so that's described in the report, as well as some work with dairy education funded through the Vermont Dairy Promotion Council funding for marketing and education. So happy to answer any questions. My contact information is on the back as well for if anything comes up. But yeah, I'm not sure how much time we have for any questions, but if you have any.
I know there are some folks from the agencies who needed to wrap up by 2.
Yes,
How
that's
many?
me.
You and anybody else? Okay. I think we have time for a couple of questions then. Anybody has one for Gina? How many, can you say again, how many recipients there were in the last calendar year?
73.
73, so $500,000 divided up, 73 recipients. And it sounded like past year anyway, more of them went to early childhood programs.
Yeah, mostly through the CSA as a mini grant program. We had 49 grants that went to the CSA mini grant program. So each one of those was around $1,000, but we're able to reach, 45 or so early childcare programs, and then 3 or 4 after school programs participated in the CSA grant.
So by pausing that program for a year, what will the impact of that be on?
Yeah, I think it was a really tough decision that the agency made. And I think there will be an impact for those early childcare programs. We are hoping that through this additional funding that's coming in through Local Food for Schools and Childcare, we'll be able to serve an additional couple hundred early childcare programs that haven't been able to benefit from the CSA grant. I think there are around, maybe Connor can correct me, I think there are maybe 230 early childcare programs that participate in CACFP, and so they'd be eligible for support through this new USDA grant program. But yeah, there will be an impact, and we definitely don't want to cancel this program. It's been really popular, but we are just taking a pause for this year.
Any other questions from the committee? So we've got, for folks who are watching this report is on our website today. This is an annual report that the legislature has asked you to submit. So it's one of those reports that we went through a list of reports, and this is one of them, I think. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And if it's okay, I'd like to just introduce the next speakers, if that's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to check with Connor and see whether he feels any urgency in going.
I think we'll be okay with the schedule.
Okay,
I'm not up for step two.
okay. Go ahead then.
Yeah, if we need to switch around, these are students that have they have to get on buses at a certain
They
time.
also
too,
have-
so-
okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
So next is Sabrina McDonough from Shrewsbury Mountain School with her students.
Good afternoon. My name is Sabrina McDonough, and I am a 5th and 6th grade teacher at Shrewsbury Mountain School in Shrewsbury, Vermont. I am here in support of the Farm to School and Early Childhood Grant Programs and ask that you continue to support these programs with level funding base appropriation of $500,000 for the coming fiscal year. Additionally, please continue to support the local food incentive program for schools at a $500,000 level funding base appropriation. These grant programs have helped our school create systems and structures which provide children with opportunities to connect directly with the food they eat while also building relationships with community members. Previously, our school garden was only used by 1 or 2 classes. Funding from the Farm to School grant allowed us to make changes to the structure of the garden so that each classroom has its own bed, as well as adding fencing that created a more viable garden that could be used as an outdoor classroom space, which all teachers can now access. This work has allowed more students direct experience with the garden while also promoting working relationships with local farmers and our local agricultural organization, SAGE, as we plan, prepare, and plant our beds. Not only do students enjoy the experience of working outdoors and growing their own food, they are able to make connections with other curricular content, whether it is determining the volume and cost of soil for our raised beds or observing pollinators at work. These experiences are further enhanced by using the harvest from the garden when cooking. Through the grant funds, we were able to purchase and stock 2 cooking carts, which each class uses to create dishes from Vermont's Harvest of the Month program, sampling local produce and new and interesting recipes. Recently, our 3rd and 4th graders cooked lemon herb roasted beets, while my own students prepared sweet potato tater tots. Perhaps the event that best highlights students' connection to the garden and their willingness to try new foods is our Harvest Festival, where each class prepares a dish for the rest of the school to sample. This year, my class created an eggplant curry, a new tasting experience for most. This celebration of our work gives us a chance to gather as a community, recognizing the roles that we all play in tending the garden. Along with the efforts for redesigning the garden, the Farm to School grant allowed us to plant a small orchard and implement a composting system. 2 years ago, all students from pre-kindergarten to 6th grade worked with staff from Retree Us to prepare the ground and plant several fruit trees on our campus. The children were amazed at the longevity of this project, noting that many of them will be attending our local middle and high school when we harvest our first fruits. This has not stopped them from appreciating the endeavor, and in fact, we have dedicated tree stewards in our 3rd and 4th grade students. Composting is the most recent system that we have adopted. Just as we have stewards for the trees, my 5th and 6th grade students have become the leaders of our composting. Grant funds allowed us to construct a shed and secure bins that will be a part of the school for years to come. I now turn this over to my students to share their thoughts. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Quinn, and I'm in 5th grade at Shrewsbury Mountain School. When I was in 3rd grade, my school planted trees to create an orchard on a part of our playground. When I helped plant the trees, it brought our school together as a community. It helped me learn the process of planting trees and taking care of them too. We mulched the trees as well as digging out the snow around the trunks in winter to keep mice from ringing the young trees. Now, I am in 5th grade. Our new 3rd and 4th graders take care of the orchard, which in years to come will give us apples, pears, and peaches for snacks and cooking. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Michaela Vader, and I'm in 6th grade at the Shrewsbury Mountain School. Today I'm going to be talking about our garden and why schools should be able to have one. All of the plants we have in the garden we use for cooking and making dishes with the class or to support the pollinators. In the 5th and 6th grade class, we help out in the garden by taking care of the weeds and putting mulch down so that we can plant more things. I think that the garden is a way that we can bring the community together because we all have to work together to make sure that the garden is healthy. One thing I have thought about the garden is that we all have a part in taking care of it, so I think that brings some responsibility to your actions. We even have an eco-friendly decomposition system where we have scraps or of food at lunch or snack. We have a compost bin that we take out to our decomposition system where we turn our compost into fertilizer for the garden so that the food doesn't just go to a landfill and damage the environment even more. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Benna McGowan. And my name is Ellie McDevitt. We are in 6th grade and we go to Shrewsbury Mountain School. We are here to talk about the composting system in our school and why we think you should support programs like this. Our 5th and 6th grade classroom has started using the composting system this October, and it has helped us learn more about systems and our environment in ways that we wouldn't be able to learn in a classroom. Composting has helped us better understand the process of food and matter breaking down in an ecosystem. Twice a week, 3 of the students in our class go out to our composting shed with a volunteer. We use a recipe which includes food scraps and other materials to make sure that our compost is healthy. We also gather data to monitor and observe the health of our compost pile. Recently, we have noticed that the compost temperature has risen almost 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which shows that it is starting to become active. On days that our school does not compost on site, the leftover food supports a local farm that raises pigs. It is important to keep this program and others like it going because it helps us learn more about how to protect the environment so that kids in the future can have the same opportunities that we have. Kids at our school volunteer and enjoy this activity because they want to learn more about how composting can help our school and local communities as well as the planet as a whole. It was good for us to have these opportunities to use our resources better and use the compost to enrich the soil of our garden, rather than buying new soil and putting food scraps into a landfill. We have had this opportunity to learn as well as interact with community members. Kids in the future at Shrewsbury, as well as other schools around Vermont, deserve to have this chance as well. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any questions for the Shrewsbury Mountain students?
Hi, Sabrina. So thank you, first of all. Make sure you do say thank you to all of your students for joining. It was really helpful to hear directly from them. Let's see whether any of the committee has questions for your class. How big is your class, Sabrina? How many students do you have?
So I have 20, this year I have 21 students in a combined 5th and 6th grade. So I just have 3 of my 6th graders and 1 of my 5th graders with us right now.
Okay.
But we all take turns with the composting or when we're planting in the garden. So that's something we are all involved in. Actually, the tater tots we made yesterday, so they were pretty good.
Could you just say a word or two about how you became aware of the grant opportunity?
So the staff at my school originally worked with Shelburne Farms as we were working towards sustainability. And as part of that work, our principal at the time applied for the Farm to School grant. I know that I actually went up when we were awarded the large check so that we could, I went up to Montpelier for that when we did it. And then, so she was aware of it. I think it was probably through our connection working with Shelburne Farms at the time.
I can just make a comment. I had a chance to visit your school. I think it was a Farm to School conference back in the fall. And I was so impressed with how the garden and the orchards and the classroom and the eating opportunities were all really integrated. It was kind of a model of what we could have all around the state. So we're really fortunate to be providing that for your students. Thank you.
It is a wonderful thing that they all have those opportunities. And as I said, so like the composting we started building before, it's only in this past fall that we've been implementing it. And part of that is because we were helping a local farm, local family that uses the scraps for their pigs, which they raise. So.
Yeah, the composting system is really impressive. Like, honestly, I've never seen anything like it in a school. And it would be a good model for other schools to think about, because so many places,
There you go.
I mean, we have a law that compost is supposed to be separated and so many people, even institutions don't follow it, but they're doing it right.
So it's good. And we wanted to, so the reason we didn't start until October is that we want to make sure everything was in place. And because we do, since we are at the top of the mountain, we have to make sure that the bears, because since they do get into our garbage, we had to make sure that the system, when I said secure bins, we had to really make sure that it was going to be something that had longevity to it, so that once we instituted it, it was something that would keep being able to be used.
Great, thank you very much, Sabrina, and to your class for joining us. And why don't we turn it over to Reeve next?
There we go, wrong button. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. It's nice to be with you. Thanks for zooming us in. My name is Reeve Basom. I live in Glover and I work in Hardwick as the place-based education coordinator for the Center for an Agricultural Economy, where I partner closely with schools in Orleans Southwest Supervisory Union. And I'm also a member, and have been for a while, of the Vermont Farm to School and Early Childhood Network. Thank you all for your time and attention today. The Farm to School and Early Childhood grants and the local food incentive have such significant positive impact across the state. And I urge you to please support the level funding for both of these programs at $500,000 each. Today, I'm at Hazen Union School, where I co-facilitate a class called A Recipe for Human Connection. And I'm with some students who you will hear from shortly, although one of them is sick, so she's here in spirit, and you have her testimony, I believe, in your materials. And she is sorry she couldn't join us, but Ginger is here, and you'll hear from her in a moment. So the Recipe for Human Connection class is currently being supported through funding from the Farm to School Vision Grant that Gina mentioned earlier. And it's a class that explores how food helps us connect and build community. Through shared recipes, harvesting, cooking, farm field trips, and community meals, the class creates a space for students to grow their collaboration and communication skills, to develop shared vision, build relationships and belonging across difference, and offer something meaningful and tangible to the community. When a beloved community meal that had existed in Hardwick for decades was shuttered during the pandemic, it was Hazen students who were instrumental in bringing it back. And now, each month at the Hardwick Community Lunch, Recipe for Human Connection students prepare a hearty, delicious, free meal featuring local ingredients and serving over 100 people. This intergenerational, challenging, and highly rewarding undertaking brings people together from across the community, engaging students directly in local food systems, social resilience, and community food security. And you are all invited to come anytime. It's the third Thursday of every month at noon, from noon to 1 at the United Church of Hardwick, and it's open to all. So please feel free to come and have a meal if you happen to be up in the kingdom. The Farm to School and Early Childhood programs provide key support for this class, as well as so many other valuable projects and innovative programs across the state. These programs are helping students and communities flourish. Please support the level funding of both the Farm to School and Early Childhood grants and the local food incentive program. And thank you so much for listening. I'm gonna now turn it over to Ginger, who would like to share a bit more about the Recipe for Human Connection class with you all.
Okay. My name is Ginger Bowley. I'm from Greensboro, Vermont, and I'm in the 11th grade at Hazen. Recipe for Human Connection class has been really important to me. In 7th and 8th grade, I didn't talk to anyone. And in 9th grade, I joined Recipe for Human Connection class, and it helped me become more social and build confidence. I really love the community meal. At the community meal, we are all there, all day cooking and working together. And we have to communicate really well to make it happen. When we serve food, we're socializing with the people who we are serving to. So that really helps with communication. There are times when we have little dance parties while we are cooking. So it's a very joyful experience. We had the opportunity to interview people at the meal and write an article for the Hardwick Gazette. I had never thought of myself as a journalist before, and it was fun to get feedback from people and share about our experience with the community. Thank you for listening, and I hope you continue to fund for Farm to School program.
Thank you, Ginger. We have a question from one of the representatives here, Representative Nelson.
Yes, Ginger, what might be on the menu? Like on one of your community meals?
Well, it depends. We all come together and we all decide on like what we're gonna make. Sometimes we make like mac and cheese or like soups. So,
And we always make a big coleslaw with local veggies from the Just Cut program at the Center for an Ag Economy that provides the veggies for that.
and
Coleslaw.
we all make desserts.
Oh yeah, there's always dessert.
Yep.
You can be sure.
Coleslaw and mac and cheese. You had me there. I'll be there sometime.
Representative Lipsky has a
As
question.
a follow-up question to Representative Nelson, we're pretty much here every Thursday, full day. So how late in the year do these lunches go on? I live in Lamoille County, so Hardwick's not really too far out of the way. We'd love to come.
So it actually goes all year round, and there are students who continue to help out through the summer, but folks from my organization, CAE, take on making sure that the meal continues during the summer months when school is out of session. But we do our best to stay in touch with students and continue to incorporate them into the meals to the extent that they're available. But as far as, welcoming you all to join us, it happens every month, so you can count on it.
China.
Representative Byrd.
Ginger, do you ever make apple pie?
Sometimes.
All right, I'll be there too.
Representative Byrd grows apples, so that's why he's asking.
We're hoping that some of our apple trees here at Hazen that we planted last year, someday will have enough fruit that we can make really hyper-local apple pies for the community lunch.
Did you say you had another student who was not able to join today, or?
Yes, so Harmony Peets, her testimony should be in the materials that I hope folks there received. And she is out sick today, but I encourage you to read her offering. The class has been really meaningful to her as well.
Yeah, we do have her testimony on our website, so the committee will be able to read it, and anybody who's watching can find that too.
Great.
I'm sorry that she can't, or that Harmony can't join us.
Yes, I think she sends her regards.
Okay. Are there any other questions, or do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think just to say thank you for spending so much time listening to all of these stories about Farm to School, and appreciate your support.
Right, well, if you are able to stay on the call, you're welcome to. And
I think we need to head to the Senate committee, the
Okay.
Ed committee. Yeah, so we'll pop off.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Connor Floyd. I'm the Grant Programs Manager at the Agency of Education, and I manage the Local Foods Incentive Grant Program. I can start with just a really quick overview. So the Local Foods Incentive has a $500,000 appropriation. The main goal is to incentivize schools to purchase more Vermont local foods for their programs. And when we're talking about local for this program, we're using the Vermont local definition. There's really two tracks to the grant program. First, there's the baseline year grant. every school or a school food authority can apply to that once, right? It's the on-ramp to the local foods incentive. We have a pretty basic application that asks them some questions, really to get them thinking about shifting their purchasing to buy more local food. There's no purchasing requirement to receive that baseline year grant. You submit that application, we'll review it, and then once it's accepted, the school will receive a 15 cents per lunch served grant award. Thereafter, those school food authorities that did receive a baseline year grant, any subsequent year can apply for a subsequent year grant. And that's when they have to hit that 15% local purchasing threshold in order to qualify for a grant award. There's 3 tiers to that. There's a 15% tier, a 20% tier, and a 25% tier. And the grant award scales as well, 15 cents per lunch served, 20 cents, 25 cents.
I think I'm going to ask to have the door open unless it gets too noisy. We're a little more crowded than usual, and it will get stuffy in here. And with all of the, you can hear my voice, all of the things going around. Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, that's the broad overview. Right after that first year, you have to hit 15% local purchasing to qualify. And eventually, once every school food authority that's interested in the grant does that baseline year grant, essentially the local foods incentive just becomes that subsequent year grant award. We did submit an annual report about a week or so ago that goes into detail about who those grantees were, some trends that we saw. And then there's a bunch of tables at the end with a lot of data if you're interested, looking at, school lunch counts, percentages, grant awards, a few other pieces of data that we thought was relevant. Or things that I want to highlight that we highlighted in the report as well. One, we had a doubling of subsequent year grantees this year. So last year we had 6 school food authorities that hit 15% local purchasing. We had 12 this year, which is really encouraging to see that number going up. With that being said, about a third of all school food authorities that are eligible to apply for this grant haven't engaged in any way. So about a third, around 20 school food authorities haven't applied for a baseline year grant, even though it's one of the easiest grants that you could apply for as a school. We think that the reluctance there is that these are school food authorities that don't want to commit to needing to buy local going forward. And we stress that there's no commitment, right? The baseline, you can apply for the baseline year, receive that grant award, and never engage again, although we'd like you to keep, on that track. So we're working on outreach there. The flip side of that is that 2/3 of the school food authorities in Vermont have engaged in some way, either through a baseline year grant or following that up with subsequent year grant awards. The next point I'd like to make is that we're seeing increased grant funding. So up until this year, there was a downward trend where we had that $500,000 appropriation. The first year we got really close to it, like $480,000 in grant funding, and then it kind of stepped down year after year. The reason for that was fewer school food authorities were eligible for that initial baseline year grant, right? And that's something that really anyone can receive. And so once you had to hit that 15% threshold, it just becomes harder to receive the grant award. So we saw that kind of step down as eligibility for that first year grant kind of dried up. That changed this year. I think that's in large part because we have 12 school food authorities that hit 15%. More grant funding was going to that subsequent year grantee pool. And my hunch is that we're going to see that trend continue. It takes a while, right, to shift the purchasing of these large programs. And so that's been encouraging. So this year we did have $384,818 go out in grant funding. And that's both between the 6 baseline year grantees and those 12 subsequent year grantees. And then finally, generally speaking, what we're seeing is that for every $1 of grant funding that goes towards this program for those subsequent year grantees, that's reflected in $3 of Vermont local purchasing that they make. And so we're seeing about a 1 to 3 investment in the grant program, which has been an interesting baseline that's been fairly consistent now that we have about 3 years of data there. And so I'll leave it with that. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have about the program now.
And just to be clear, because we are talking about 2 different things, the program that you're talking about is not the same as the grant, the farm to school grant program.
Exactly, right. So this is a different pool of $500,000, the farm to school grants are administered by the Agency of Agriculture, and the local foods incentive is administered by the Agency of Education.
I don't know that we don't have your report. Sidonia stepped out. I don't know whether it comes to our committee or whether it goes to the education committee.
I'm not sure how that works. It is posted online.
Okay, we'll find it and then make sure that we can see it. Representative Boswell.
Yeah, just a quick question. We had some testimony this morning talking about local foods.
Mhm.
And apparently there's some variations in how that's defined. Like it can mean within the boundaries of Vermont, or it can mean within 20 miles of the boundary of Vermont. I'm wondering when you say local food, what's your definition?
So the definition is written into the law that enacted this program. And so that's the Agency of Agriculture, I think, or Vermont local definition. So there's kind of 3 tiers. If it's a raw agricultural product like meat, apples, needs to be grown or raised in Vermont. If it's a processed product, it needs to have 50% of the ingredients coming from Vermont. And either it needs to be processed in Vermont or the company needs to be headquartered in Vermont. And then there's a unique food category for foods that you couldn't reasonably grow in Vermont, like guacamole.
Chocolate or something.
Right, exactly. And so you could have Vermont local guacamole if it's processed in Vermont and the company is headquartered in Vermont.
Thank you.
Representative Burt.
I'll just make a statement that I think that there's a sense of a sense of pride and a sense of identity for kids when they're eating food that comes from farmers that are around them, that you can't put a dollar value on that. I'd like to, when our own kids are having maple syrup on their pancakes at school like that, the idea of Vermont made being there or Aunt Jemima,
Right. Yeah.
it makes me twitch a little bit.
Yeah.
So no, I think there's just a value there that's intrinsic to it.
Certainly.
I remember having you in, or maybe I'm not sure if you were actually here.
This is my first time being here in person.
Physically in the room. Okay, good. That we were looking at the data from 2 years ago, perhaps, and wondering, how do we get those additional food authorities who haven't yet tried, just signed up to get a try? How do we convince them? And then also whether we at some point want to revisit the percentages, dollar amounts attached to them. I know that this is the year to do that, but just Eddie, have you been thinking about that?
Yeah, I think so. Taking that first point of, how are you engaging with those kind of holdouts? And we do see year after year, a couple more, baseline grantees apply that chose not to for whatever reason for those previous years. So we're slowly chipping away at those numbers. I do think a part of it is as more and more school food authorities do hit 15%, and we're doing a little bit more publicity. We've partnered with Vermont Feed to create some celebratory banners that are going up in the schools, part of that school pride piece that you had talked about. So I think as that's in the air, right? And you hear, the school district, just over the border is hitting that threshold. I think there'll be a little bit of maybe some competition happening there that will help move the needle. In terms of whether or not, in terms of those percentages and the 500,000, if we're really successful, eventually 500,000 wouldn't be enough. I think we still have a couple more years because, again, those baseline year grants stop happening. And so it needs to be those that are hitting 15% local. What would happen right now based on the current legislation is if grant requests exceeded the 500,000 and no action was taken for more funding to be appropriated, we would just prorate all of the grant awards. So we'd take that 500,000 cap and split it among the grantees in an equitable way.
Representative Lipsky.
Yeah. Thank you, Connor. We've had testimony in our previous biennium on this farm to school initiative, And there were a few superstars. Their testimony stays with me. Year after year, Harley down there in Bellows Falls, school program that was touching 30% locally produced, served in their school. So they were the champions. And to your point about publicity and education, these are worthy stories to help expand initiatives. There were others, the Lamoille North, it was quite exceptional, and others, Crosset Brook in Washington County, that had such creative programs within what we realize it's the staff or the dietitian or who's ever running these food service programs on the ground that really drive the success. And so in any classroom, great teachers really inspire. So publicity, I think, would be good. Call CAX or whatever they use down
Certainly.
in Vermont or whatever.
And we did hold
Digger or someone. These are great stories to report.
And we did hold a press conference down at Wyndham Northeast in the spring of 2024, celebrating exactly that, and did have some good coverage. And I think they were certainly appreciative of. And I think you're also right, just with that staff. And we've got Bob coming up next. That I'm sure we'll talk to all the work it takes.
Well, this committee is very proud of all these initiatives and historically been very supportive.
Right. Any other questions for Connor? If we have time later in this month or later in the session, we may want to dig in a little more to the report and have you back in.
Certainly, yeah. If you look at those tables and you have questions or we want to talk about details, I'd be happy to come back.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Chart that has, which are the schools that have been. It's like which
Yeah.
schools have.
I'll send along. We've got all that in that report, so I'll make sure that it makes it to the committee.
Hey, Dana, do you want to direct traffic here?
Yeah, Bob. You got next.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be back here again. Thank you for the opportunity to address the importance of farm to school and the Vermont Universal Meal Program to our state. For the record, my name is Robert Hildebrand, and I am a resident of Montpelier, Vermont, and I'm a food service director with the Abbey Group. I currently manage the school meal programs in Central Vermont Supervisory Union and several in Orange East Supervisory Union, and I also have the pleasure of managing the cafeteria in this building. So if anything you want to tell me about Bryant.
Brian's a rock star.
Brian is a rock star, let me tell you. Today, we're asking that you continue to support the farm to school and early childhood program with level funding base appropriation of $500,000 for the fiscal year 2026. And also to support the local food incentive program for schools at the current $500,000 level funding base appropriation. In addition, we're asking that you oppose the proposed repeal of Vermont's Universal School Meals Program in the governor's fiscal year 26 budget. And I'm going to focus on that. The Universal School Meal Program in Vermont has been an unqualified success story since its inception in 2020. The program has supported Vermont children with the fuel that they need to be successful learners, has fostered an atmosphere of inclusion around shared meal times, and has been a vital component of our ability to support Vermont farmers and food producers through increased purchases of local food. It has done so in a very fiscally efficient manner, costing much less than originally planned. Those of us in the child nutrition field have long known that students have unequal access to nutritious food outside of the school day. Prior to the availability of the Universal School Meal Program in Vermont, this inequality also extended to the school day. Many families did not qualify for free meals under the prior means tested program, but were struggling to make ends meet as a family. And these children often did not have adequate meals from home, and either just didn't eat at school while they were there, or did eat and built up an enormous school meal debt for their families. This school meal debt resulted in significant waste of administrative resources attempting to collect the outstanding debt, and typically ended up being borne by the school districts when written off as uncollectible and funded from the general fund. Make no mistake, Vermont was already paying for many school meals for families that did not qualify under the USDA free reduced program, but we were doing so in a way that both marginalized, stigmatized students and was incredibly inefficient. The current administration says that universal school meal pays for meals that go to families that can afford to pay, and this is true. But that slice of Vermont families is a small minority compared to the large number of families who benefit from universal school meals that really need the help. Besides the low-income households who already qualify in a means-tested environment, there is a large cohort of families who make too much to qualify but are struggling to meet the high cost of living. The income cutoff for reduced meals for a family of four is $57,000 currently, leaving many families who are very much struggling without access. Can you imagine a family of four in Vermont making even the median household income of about $78,000, really being able to afford the $3,000 or so it would cost to buy school lunch and breakfast for their children each year? And I've seen the results of the universal school meal program at Vermont schools going back over 10 years in some cases under the community eligibility program. And I've witnessed firsthand the change in the school's culture and environment as the need to worry if children have the fuel they need to learn is mitigated. It makes the cafeteria a place where everyone is equal. Kids can just eat a hot meal, no hoops to jump through, no questions asked. The cafeteria is no longer a place that further stratifies our society into the haves and have-nots. And I also worked in schools in New Hampshire, and I've seen those programs go right back to the bad old days as soon as the state reverted back to the means-tested model. If a school meal program struggles with participation because of affordability, then the program loses money. Any deficit in the school program is paid for out of the school district's general funds. We're already paying these costs just in a hidden, inefficient way that denied children meals and burdened families. Just as importantly, the Universal School Meals Program has allowed school meal programs to greatly increase their spending on local Vermont produced foods. In the schools I manage for Central Vermont Supervisory Union, we have increased our purchases of Vermont foods to over $52,000 last year, translates to a little over 18% of our total spending on food. And so this is the fourth year we participated in the local LFI and the third year that we received the grant this last year. We're on track to do so again this year. We focus on product categories that make a big impact on our purchasing. Things like beef, yogurt, apples, maple syrup. We've developed strong relationships with our local producers, like Representative Burr for apples, and brought a sign for your farm. I've get one for you for a while. Pick it up on the We didn't buy Burt's apples for quite a number of years. And John Buck, who's with me here today, for maple syrup. Last year, for example, we supported Buck Family Maple with over $4,100 in maple syrup purchases. And that's just in 6 schools. Here's how it works for us. When we have universal school meals, more children eat school meals. This increased participation gives us much greater labor production efficiency, allowing us to increase the percentage of the program's revenue that we can spend on food. This affords us the flexibility to pay a little more for local foods versus vegetables from California or beef from Iowa or apples from Washington or, God help us, fake maple syrup. Farmers know that they can count on this income and adjust their production and sales plans accordingly. It is the definition of a virtuous cycle. Universal school meals have been a big success in Vermont. We are feeding many more children than under the old system. We are buying much more locally produced Vermont food. Vermont families who are struggling to meet the high cost of living can be assured that their children are at least getting nutritious meals while at school. Children can just eat a meal when they need without worrying how it'll make them look or if it is putting their family in. This is all happening at a pretty minimal cost to Vermont taxpayers. Please don't allow Vermont to go back to a system that fails our families and our local economy. In closing, I'm going to ask you again to support the continued funding of the Farm to School and Local Food Incentives Program at their current level of $500,000 for each program, and for your continuing support preserving universal school meals that has been such a success for Vermont. Thank you.
Representative Nelson.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record to all my colleagues in here, and some of you have heard me say this before. The 2-to-1 return, federal dollars to state dollars for universal school meals, it's a no-brainer.
Thank you, sir.
It's an and then learning that if we go back the old system, it's gonna cost our districts roughly $5 million to put the staff back in place to collect and handle the paperwork, the money. And then do we capture all the federal dollars that we're able to capture through our federal meals program?
Yeah, and there's a lot of backdoor things getting paid for out of the general fund. Programs that lose money on their operations, that gets paid for out of general fund.
$14,000 prior to COVID in our district.
Yep. Yeah.
Just up the high school.
But that's just in bad debt.
Yeah, and every kid gets fed. We paid it.
Yep.
I will be the standard bearer, and I'm writing the speech already when we bring that bill to the floor. So I want to present it.
Thank you,
Representative.
I don't know if this is our webpage or not. Some of us like to read paper, but
I will, yes, I will.
Document and presentation be very helpful when we are advocating for, more importantly, our constituents back home.
Yes, I'll upload it. I was still sort of editing it just before I came down.
But it's pretty well written from someone who doesn't write well.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Thank you. And I will also say that, to what Connor was talking about before, so in Vermont, about half the schools use a food service management company like the Abbey Group, and about half self-managed. And what we are seeing in the request for proposals that are coming out now is that districts are putting, a number in, 20% local, something like that. So that's going to continue. They're looking for that, and it's working its way into our bids. We're pricing it into our bids that we're expected to purchase a certain level of local foods, and so that's going to continue to feed the LFI grants as well.
I know we, again, this goes back to a conversation from a couple of years ago, but we wondered whether schools that had contracts that were 5 years long were struggling to participate in the program because there wasn't an incentive for necessarily for you, or whoever was running the program to participate. But any thoughts on that, or?
So the one at CVSU, it's not in our current contract. We're doing it because we can, and it's working for us, and it's working for the district, and we can make it work. But we're seeing it in requests for proposals that are coming out for new contracts over the last couple of years, that they're explicitly putting that in there. So it's getting priced into our bids now. So that's the mechanism by which that's working.
Any other questions?
So, thank you. So if like NCSU, North Country Supervisors Union, put in a request to go 15% local food, they present that to the Abbey Group, and then the Abbey Group we use the Abbey Group. They would go out and source that, or it
would just become part of the purchases that we do. We'd be expected as part of our contractual obligation to hit that certain percent.
Whether it's through Black River or Cisco or whoever.
Wherever it comes from, or directly to a farmer.
Yeah. Thank you. I
do find that the only way to really hit the number, we're not going to get there on kale. We're just not. Kale is lovely and kale is local, but we're not going to eat that much kale. But we eat a lot of apples, we eat a lot of yogurt, we eat a lot of beef, and we eat a lot of maple syrup. So, and I'm looking for one or two more big categories. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, your milk, theoretically.
Milk doesn't count towards LFI.
It doesn't.
No.
Theoretically, it's all probably from Vermont farms.
There's nobody producing Vermont milk in the little, Hood has the plant in Concord. It's probably, a lot of it is Vermont milk, but it doesn't qualify as Vermont milk.
You doing the 8 ounce?
Yeah.
You gotta get to the 12 ounce.
Or the big 5 gallons.
Well, I like that better, but the 12 ounce, the kids are getting a serving, and it helps the Vermont dairy industry. That's true.
You're registered.
Thank you for your time.
So next, we actually have John Buck. So there's a slight,
Yeah.
we're very fortunate. We have John and Joe here. So John,
Thank you.
next.
Nice to see you again.
Gee, long time no see.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate Bob Hildebrand inviting me to come in and talk about Maple and the importance of the farm to school program it is to our small family Maple Farm in Washington, Vermont. It's a 70-acre family-run farm. We have about 2,000 taps. And according to the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association, makes up one of the largest proportions of membership representative of maple sugarers in Vermont are small family sugar makers. And so, Bob talked about the income that we receive from the sale of maple to the Abbey Group. And it is important to us from the standpoint that he brought out that it's a regular, we can count on, we know those kids are going to eat maple syrup. And so we can set aside a certain amount of syrup every year, knowing that we can sell that to Abbey Group and more specifically to the schools that are really close to our sugar house. For example, the Washington Village School, one of the schools, is only 6 miles away. So we're bringing syrup in there and we've been doing this now for, 5, 6 years or so. We've gotten to know all the food service people and they love us when they come in. They say, oh, thank God you're here. We're almost out of maple syrup. And so it's being consumed rapidly by these kids. But aside from the income portion of it for us, because that, like I say, there's no denying it's important. Because for every dollar you spend, you lose 2. So you need to be able to get that dollar in each time, right? As a farmer, you know what that kind of cash flow looks like. But on the other hand, what I find so gratifying is the look on the faces of the kids when we come in with our maple syrup, and knowing that these kids are seeing food produced next door. Maple syrup and all the other food that they eat doesn't come from a store. And it's really gratifying for us to know that they are being indoctrinated this way. It's just part of life. Oh, the food maple comes from the trees. Beef comes from the beef farms. It comes from farms. It comes from the earth. It comes from our neighbors. And so, this program has a huge cultural benefit to Vermont and Vermonters. And it helps to keep rural and the rural culture of Vermont alive. And we depend upon active farms to keep the forest and the farmland healthy and vibrant and viable so that it doesn't compete with real estate values and other human uses. So, I don't have a prepared testimony. I just wanted to testify in person and real here about, what it means to us personally, but what it means to us on a broader scale too, because we are at Buck Family Maple, and I think at any farm, thinks about sustainability, thinks about taking good care of the earth, the forest, the farmland, and also thinks about the next generation. And in my case, my grandchildren. I'm hoping that they'll use this property too, to make maple syrup or some other, firewood or whatever else comes from the property. So it has these hugely multiple benefits. So sustaining small farms in Vermont is crucial. And I think the farm to school program is one of those programs that's essential for making that happen.
Thank you. That's really helpful to hear that perspective. Remind us where you're located.
Our maple farm is in Washington, South Washington, Vermont. We are on about 70 acres of forest land out there. Very rural. If you know Washington at all or northern Orange County at all, it's it's a very rural part of the state. It's a beautiful part of the state too. Our sugar bush sits at about 2,000 feet in elevation, which seems remarkable when you're in this rolling kind of forest landscape. How could it be so high in elevation? But it snows there about 8 months out of the year. Mud season is feels like it's longer than that. Which reminds me too, if not for mud season, we'd have a lot more school children coming to our sugar bush for tours. We get lined up every year to come and invariably mud season keeps that from happening on a regular basis. But it is the fact that we are so close and so local gives us teachers an opportunity to bring their children out to give them a firsthand look at what happens, on the farm.
Great, thank you. Just, I want to say for the committee, we've got three more witnesses that are going to be speaking. We've just been, usually we have a break and a chance to stretch, and we're just going to plow right through here. We want to be sure we hear from everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Good to see you, John. Good to see you.
Thank you, John. And next up is Joe Boson.
Those is mine, so I'm gonna just keep an eye on it. I'll take that. I've been spoken for, I know.
Don't block the.
Hey, hello, y'all. I saw some of y'all a few weeks back. My name's Joe Boston, Vermont Bean Crafters and High Farm down in Warren. And I'm here similarly to tell the story, to advocate for this legislation. And I really appreciate everything that Bob said about universal meals program too, as someone with a kid going through the school systems and just I've been working in the farm to school space for about 15 years with our company and just have heard all these anecdotes from food service personnel and directors about how important that program's been. So to roll this picture out a little bit for you all, like Bean Crafters, we started about 15 years ago. And one of the reasons we started it was to kind of get better, healthier foods into places that the local food movement kind of didn't necessarily maybe leave behind, but was having trouble engaging with. And so healthcare, K through 12, early ed, incarcerated populations, basically all the people in our communities that have the least agency over their food choices are the places that we wanted to get better food to. And so from the first schools that we worked with, which was like Burlington School Food Project and Doug Davis and Sarah Heusner and all these people that were really early advocates, to working with Abby Willard and Vermont Feed and really kind of learning along the way how to ask better questions and listen more, and not just be like, here's what we got, you should want it. It's just like, what do you want and how can we help you get that? We've kind of evolved our business model to the point where we now have our products getting picked up on a weekly basis by PFG. If you want to sell to schools in the state, it really helps to have it on a broad liner. Otherwise, you're chipping away at 5% of discretionary spends for a lot of school districts. There's going
to say PFG Performance
Food Group, and
their tractor trailer was backed up here this morning. If anybody came in at 8:30, you saw how big that truck is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we started selling with Black River Produce, and then Reinhart bought Black River, and then Performance bought Reinhart. All to say, it's to work in this space it's cumbersome. It's risky in its way. It requires higher insurance, product liability insurance. And so to know that there's momentum going into having it be a worthwhile investment of our time and resources to work in farm to school is really helpful. And so when we're talking about these local food multipliers of like $3 to 1, I think it's really also important to put in, it's not just like those dollars are a flash in the pan. We're basically, every local spend incentive that goes into this space kind of helps act like a tugboat rerouting this ocean liner of what school food service is in a direction that's more conducive with local. We're basically reformatting a generation's deep, wet, like status quo into a future that I think we all like resonate more with in this room. And so, for us, we do a number of things. However you want them, we got them, like dry beans, pre-cooked beans, black bean burger, make cookies and muffins out of beans. The big idea is different schools are have different equipment, have different staff, and their capacity to work with scratch cooking isn't always as much there as you would think from the outside looking in. All of the people that I've met in the farm to school, the school administration, the people on the ground in the kitchens, I'm just really humbled and impressed by all the work that they're doing. Just to even think about the fact that they have like a 20-minute churn on like seatings between students, and like to just have as someone with a toddler, like just transitioning people in and out of a mealtime and mess like that while getting the food there hot, doing all the prep work that goes into it and everything like that. It's a really impossible context. So all this support that's coming from the state to help foster these programs, it's just, it's well beyond dollars and cents, although that matters too. And so for us as an employer, as a small business owner, I'm really grateful. We're now at a point where each year, when I look at the sales reports, we're selling to over 80 different K through 12 schools in this state, which is pretty cool. We're starting now to work with help from Agency of Education and Agency of Ag to start selling to K through 12 programs in adjacent states. And so when we're thinking about this, the work we're doing for small producers to help them serve in Vermont schools is also positioning them to get their feet under them to serve to the bigger, broader markets in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York State, Maine. And that helps us get from a business that can, convert basically dozens of acres of beans, sunflower oil, herbs, carrots, onions, kale, turn them into value-added products and go from dozens of acres to hundreds of acres of demand. And all of this is really helpful and catalytic in that. So that's what I got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What kind of beans?
The beans we sell and process the most of are black beans. Yeah. We work with dozens of types, but that's the critical mass is black beans. Yeah.
So you have a harvester?
So we have a old, 30, 40-year-old pull behind bean combine at our farm, but we work with a dozen different farms to get our dry beans, and most of them have direct combine, much nicer combines than we do.
I have a friend out in Western New York State that does quite a vast number of acres of black beans.
Yes, Finger Lakes in particular is pretty good country for dry bean growing.
Yeah, he's out there near Rochester.
Yep, that makes sense.
And grows corn and soy also.
Yeah, yeah. Addison County is pretty well suited for it too.
Yeah, yes, it would be.
Yeah.
Right. Great.
Do you know how to step out while we capture things?
Okay. Yeah. All right, Patrick, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Patrick Ackerman-Hovis. I work at Food Connects out of Brattleboro, Vermont. We're a food hub and offer farm to school coaching services. All food that we distribute through Food Hub is 100% source identified. And we serve throughout Vermont, Southern New Hampshire, and Western Massachusetts. I'm here today to ask you to please support the Farm to School and Early Childhood Program with a funding base appropriation of $500,000 for the fiscal year 2026, as well as the local food incentive grant for schools at $500,000 level funding base appropriation. The Farm to School and Early Childhood Program helps schools to create the structures and build the partnerships we need to be able to bring farm fresh food into our schools and early childhood programs and offer it to our students on a daily basis. These programs are helping students learn about where their food comes from, and the food they're enjoying each day is increasingly from our state, Vermont. And we see it year over year. As Connor was talking about earlier, the LFI program is incentivizing schools to increase their local purchasing each year. In my role as institutional sales associate, I am on daily talking with school food professionals about their menus, about the food that they're bringing in, and looking for the opportunities to bring in local Vermont food to their school programs. This year, we in the last year, our year over year sales of local food incentive eligible items went from $310,000 last year to $341,000 to date this year. So it's a 10% increase, and we still have 4 months left in the school year. And that is a direct result of having that eligibility for the LFI reimbursement grant at the end of the year. They become eligible for it. The local food incentive grant also applies to school summer food programs. So this is helping the SFAs that are offering their summer food programs to students to include Vermont foods during the peak growing seasons. So we're able to, in these summer programs, be offering cucumbers and lettuce and blueberries and those great products that are available in the summertime and fresh. This in a similar way, we've seen our year-over-year LFI sales of Vermont products go from $50,000 in 2023 to $150,000 this past summer. So a large increase that we're really proud of. In the current school year, Food Connects have sold LFI eligible products to 62 Vermont schools from 37 Vermont producers. And among those producers is Green Mountain Orchards in Putney, Vermont. Owner Andre Darrow offered a quote to us for today's testimony. The push to buy local that was initiated and supported by the Vermont Department of Agriculture years ago was the best thing that happened for Green Mountain Orchards. We wouldn't be here today without it. We were thrilled to see the initiative extend to schools and other institutions. On a personal level, we love hearing our grandchildren boast that the apples their friends are chomping on at school came from Green Mountain Orchards. And this is some of the materials that we share with schools that we're sending products to. And we're encouraging these to be put on these school hoods in the cafeteria and on the walls and in classrooms, so that, you know, to the point it's been made multiple times, and children need to know where their food is coming from. And this is happening when we have faces tied to the food that they're eating and enjoy. And it's an expectation, as Joe was saying previously, that this is the expectation. This is the bar we should have. Know where our food comes from and know who's growing it and enjoying it. So in conclusion, by supporting the local food incentive grant at $500,000 level-based funding, you will help ensure our children have access to diversified range of local nutritious food while providing sustainable markets for our Vermont farmers. From our farmers to our children, the LFI grant program is a win-win. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Patrick. Good to hear all the different voices. And did you want to finish up, Dana?
Sure, I'll read closer.
Okay, yeah.
And then we can get up and get started. Sprint. All right, good afternoon, committee members. Thank you so much for having us all here today. For the record, my name is Kayla Strom. I'm a resident of Richmond, Vermont, and I am the Farm to School Program Manager at the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont. I work directly with schools, farmers, and distributors to strengthen Vermont's local food system. So thank you for taking the time to listen to the many perspectives shared today in support of Farm to School. So I'm also here to ask you to support level funding of two critical programs, the Vermont Farm to School and Early Childhood Program and the Local Foods Incentive, both at $500,000 for fiscal year 2026. These programs are essential for connecting youth with food systems education in our agricultural community, while simultaneously supporting Vermont farmers and food producers. While you've heard from others about the importance of these programs, I want to focus on our local purchasing goal and the impact of the state's investments. As a network, we have a goal to reach 30% local purchasing by 2030. And to achieve this, we must continue investing in farm to school initiatives that help schools access, afford, and integrate local foods into their menus. The Local Foods Incentive is a key driver for this effort, incentivizing school meal programs to prioritize Vermont-grown and produced food. And in my role, I provide technical assistance to schools applying for the incentive and strategize with school nutrition professionals around ways to incorporate more Vermont products into their menus. Now in its third year, we have data to show that this program is really working. And according to the Agency of Education's 2025 legislative report, Connor reported this earlier, but 12 school food authorities reported at least 15% of their food purchased locally, contributing over 1.2 million into the Vermont economy through food purchases. We've doubled the number of subsequent year grantees, and so far 2/3 of SFAs in the state have participated in this program, which I think is a big win. And as
As you've heard from other speakers today, the investment the state is making in these programs matter. It is critical to make meals available for all Vermont school children. Farm to School and the Early Childhood Grants Program, the Local Foods Incentive, and Universal School Meals work hand in hand. And we need all three of these programs working together to provide schools with the resources they need to buy from Vermont producers, ensuring that high-quality local food is accessible to all. We cannot afford to go backwards. We must continue investing in a future where every child in our agricultural economies can thrive. In my work with school nutrition programs, I've heard again and again that the connections they're making with local farms, local businesses, local bakeries is made possible because of these programs. They are proud to be supporting their neighbors. Kids grow up understanding what it means to be nourished by their communities. These programs are not just feeding students, they are shaping a generation that values local food, supports Vermont farmers, and strengthens our rural economy. So we must continue to invest in this investment to ensure that every child has access to fresh, nourishing meals and that our agricultural communities remain vibrant for generations to come. So before we close, I just wanted to highlight today's lunch. If you haven't already had it in the cafeteria, it's a taco bar. This is a common school lunch, which was selected to showcase what is possible when we invest in farm to school. We worked with Bob. Are you still in the room, Bob?
Bob had run to another committee.
Bob had to leave, but we worked with Bob on designing this menu. And it features a lot of Vermont products that are feeding our kids in schools. We had All Souls Tortillas, which is another business adventure of Joe Boston. Boyd and Beef, Vermont Bean Crafters, Joe's other business. Black bean crumble. We had a house-made garden salsa, Cabot sour cream, a local seasoning, and Spanish rice with Vermont Bean Crafters black bean salad. So I hope you all had the chance to taste firsthand the impact of your investment in school meals. So I urge you to continue supporting these programs with level funding of $500,000 for the Vermont Farm to School and Early Childhood Grants Program and $500,000 for the Local Foods Incentive. Thank you so much for your time and having us all here today. We really appreciate all your efforts in supporting Farm to School. So happy to answer any questions and be a resource. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Kayla? Thank you for that good summary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Closing it up.
And boy, just in time, there's a
Great.
flashing light.
I just also want to thank Representative Boslin, who will be introducing Farm to School on the House floor at 3:00. So thank you so much for your efforts.
Resolution. Okay, good. So we're done for the day, and just a reminder that tomorrow morning we'll be here at 9:15.